MrOlson.com presents an article published in the RetroHut section entitled Adelina Patti, the First Superstar in Lisbon. Written by Mr. Olson and narrated by Arthur and Beatrix.
Between October 1885 and March 1886, Lisbon music lovers lived in anxiety. The superstar of her time, Adelina Patti, was about to arrive to Royal Theatre of São Carlos. As Theodore de Grave wrote in 1865, at the age of 22 she had already sung in front of all the sovereigns, had already known all the hits, had already become an idol of the smartest public on the planet. Among her friends, she counted princes and great lords, at her feet crowns fell, made many hearts beat in secret, and was loved by all who came to her. Insanity, delirium and nervous. That was how Cosimiro Dantas, a chronicler of the Portuguese Illustrated Press, described the reaction of Lisbon's high life to the soprano performance at the São Carlos. After all, Patti was one of the most renowned opera singers of her time. Born in Spain, to Italian parents who emigrated to the United States of America, she made her debut at the age of 16 at the New York Academy of Music. In Europe, her debut was at the Royal Italian Opera in Covent Garden on May 14, 1861. She was admired by Giuseppe Verdi, and her career, as a coloratura soprano, spanned nearly 60 years. In October 1885, 5 performances of Adelina Patti were announced, which would take place the following month. The announcement was so thunderous that the São Carlos box office sold out in 48 hours. The demand for tickets was such, that a parallel sales market developed and gave rise to all sorts of frauds. At the theatre, each ticket was sold for an exorbitant price. For Lisbon music lovers, Adelina's performance was an opportunity that they could not miss, because of the rumors about her artistic decline. Another chronicler, Gervasio Lobato, referring to the artist's performances in Barcelona, Valencia, and Madrid, echoed these reservations in his chronicles. In fact, in 1884, amidst the cheers from the audience in Barcelona and Valencia, the diva was booed, freezing the expectations of those in Madrid who disbursed considerable sums to obtain the ticket. According to Gervasio Lobato, the problem was not the singer's performance, but the high ticket price. He wrote,
"The gentlemen, who whistled Patti in Valencia and Barcelona, did not whistle the diva, they whistled the businessman. They did not complain because Patti gave them less marks, they complained because the businessman took too many marks."
However, according to the account of Claude Auger, in Valencia, when refused to sing the waltz Il Bacio, Adelina Patti received the first boo of her career. It would be in Madrid that doubts would be dispelled. At the very first recital Patti triumphed, raising any hostility, and being noisy and unanimously acclaimed. Those were great news for São Carlos entrepreneur, Antonio de Campos Valdez, who could rest assured in what could be the highlight of an excellent season in Lisbon's theatre. A cholera outbreak had spread across Europe, especially in Spain. As today, there were quarantines everywhere. For this reason, Adelina Patti made to known that, as long as the quarantines were not lifted, she would not act in Portugal. Competing for her delay was, certainly, the question of her marriage to the Marquis de Co, Henri Roger de Caussac. Their marriage collapsed, and Co granted her separation in 1877 and divorce in 1885, at which point Patti lost half her fortune. Therefore, cholera, scandal and frustration will have been sufficient reasons for the delay. Finally, the singer's arrival at the Santo Apollonia train station was announced at 6 a.m. on March 25, 1886. However, the anxiety was such that Patti was already having lunch at the Grand Hotel in Lisbon, and on the streets, people still say, insistently, that Patty did not arrive. The fears only have dissipated, when the artist was seen promenading along the Tagus River in an uncovered carriage, in the company of the French tenor Ernesto Niccolini, whom she would marry months later. It was a relief. After all, she had arrived. The details of her staying in Lisbon were meticulously reported in the social magazines of the time. João de Mata, the owner of the Grand Hotel de Lisboa, endeavored to satisfy all the desires of the celebrity who, with her presence, attracted attention to his hotel. During her staying at the Grand Hotel de Lisboa, Patty's lunch menu included rice broth, Chateaubriand sirloin steak, spinach, asparagus, boiled fish, roast chicken, and applesauce. Dinners, served around 19 p.m., included pasta soup, boiled fish, English steak with potatoes, English peas, roast chicken, spinach, and asparagus. The detail goes as far as to describe the state of the artist's throat and stomach, emphasizing the discomfort that a rheumatic pain in the knee had caused her. The prediction of Patty's artistic decadence haunted Lisbon's dilettantes. The city was divided between those who believed in her virtues and those who favored her misfortune. On the other hand, the São Carlos audience already had its diva, Fides de Vries. That is why Adelina Patti had to make use of her artistic qualities. On this subject, Gervasio Lobato wrote,
"The audience, at first, was in a cold and almost hostile expectation. The public loves de Vries, and we find him full of reason, and that is why we admire her too. He knows that his cult for the beautiful Fides forbade him to make another idol more expensive."
On the night of March 27, 1886, a mob invaded São Carlos. They were preparing to confirm the fame of the one who started her career in the United States of America and who, at that time, amazed the European stages. The tension was high, and although Patti sang and performed hauntingly well, she failed to charm the audience with Gioacchino Rossini's The Barber of Seville. Finally, she got the first applause in the third act, singing the waltz of the Opera di Nora by Giacomo Meyerbeer. She ended the performance in apotheosis with Il Bacio by Luigi Arditi. It was an enormous success, and the acclaim was almost unanimous. The fame and power of Adelina Patti aroused contradictory feelings among the Lisbon crowd. They were so divided by the artist's condemnation about her supposed eagerness for money, as for the admiration of its elegance and beauty. The ostentation was evident, and examples were not lacking. For example, she impressed viewers when she performed Verdi's La Traviata, in Covent Garden, with diamonds set into the bodice of her dress, creating a dazzling effect. Valued at around £200,000, two Bow Street police officers were hired to join the opera choir and oversee the dress. Peter Clark, director of the Boston Metropolitan Opera Archive, quoting Robert Tuggle, implies that Adelina Patti would be the highest-paid singer of her time.
Longtime Met archivist, Robert Tuggle, noted in his book, The Golden Age of Opera, that she was probably the highest-paid singer in art history, earning $5,000 a night, approximately $143,000 in 2020, which she insisted on receiving gold in her dressing room before singing.
During her visit to Lisbon, there were many comments and considerations regarding the price of tickets and subscriptions, given the poor financial capacity of even the wealthiest Lisboners. A chronicler with the nickname of Beldemonio wrote,
"Because of the coming of Adelina Patti to Lisbon, the money of the signature will not be distributed in installments a little superior to those of the Grand Opera or Covent Garden, paid by a public that groans painfully at each deadline of their contributions, and that, to put on suede gloves, sadly lunch coffee with milk from the pot."
However, there was an open debate in the press. If for some her performance was unquestionable, for others the artist's age was already felt in the voice. Gervasio Lobato wrote,
Pessimistic versions were running around that assure a Patti in decay. Her first performance in Lisbon was a brilliant denial of these false rumors, a triumphant affirmation of the complete plenitude in which his privileged talents, as an artist, still reside.
Unconvinced but surrendered, Cossimiro Dantas wrote,
If you tell me that Patti was a brilliant and amazing singer, I honestly believe it, because finally, great reputations are not only made under the empire of critics, and in the way of the remarkable artist, in her method of singing, in her phrasing, in her style, in the timbre of her voice, there are also the reflexes of a star of the first magnitude.
In any case, the success was undeniable. At the time of departure, many admirers of the famous singer went to the train station to say goodbye. She would spend 2 days in Paris, where she needed the services of her dentist to enamel her teeth and, from there, went to her castle in Wales.
You can find more stories like this on the website mrolson.com or listen to them on the podcast at mrolson.com, a podcast.